Atunci ceva de cheltuială. Vezi un nou sezon din Îți joacă mintea.
How would you figure out this problem?
I got it.
Avem și alte serii noi. Nu-i cum crezi.
Well, you might want to stop up a little bit.
Și jocul numerelor.
Who says numbers can't be sexy?
Distrează-ți mintea. În curând, numai pe National Geographic.
Two months after 9/11,
Get out of it! Get out of it!
a passenger jet
The house started vibrating.
slams into Queens, New York.
The whole street was covered in flames.
265 people are dead.
What the hell happened?
I will never forget this. It looked just like September 11th.
We asked for air cover. New York City has that.
Many fear the crash is no accident.
Everybody thought it was a terrorist attack.
This was probably the most complex investigation that I had ever directed.
It came in fast and steep. Let's hope it's not what we think.
November the 12th, 2001. It's the Veterans Day holiday in the United States, a day off for many. But at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport, it's another busy day. American Airlines Flight 587 is carrying 251 passengers en route to the Caribbean.
I always pack too much.
The crew is preparing the plane for takeoff.
Your leg. You check the rudders.
Rudders check.
Okay.
Taxi checklist is complete.
Captain Ed States is a former military pilot who joined American Airlines 16 years ago.
Leads on. Temperature check. I'm just going to double check the winds here.
First Officer Sten Molin will be the pilot flying today.
101.1. Winds checked.
He and the captain had flown together quite a bit before and liked flying together. So in that aspect, this was a normal trip.
Takeoff data is set.
American 587, follow Japan Air, Boeing 747 ahead.
Follow Japan Air, American 587.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, at long last,
We're number 2 for takeoff. Immediately after takeoff, we'll be in a left-hand turn, heading for the shoreline. 2 or 3 minutes, it'll be our turn to go.
Flight 587's flight plan takes it out over New York's Jamaica Bay before heading south to the Dominican Republic. Everyone on board is looking forward to swapping the bleak November weather for the heat of the Caribbean. One passenger has even more reason to be thankful. 2 months ago, on September the 11th, Hilda Mayor survived the attack on New York's World Trade Center. She was working on the ground floor when terrorists flew 2 airliners into the Twin Towers, killing more than 2,500 people.
9/11 was perhaps, well, not perhaps, was the biggest terrorism event that had occurred in U.S. territory.
September 11th was a day that I don't think anybody who lives in New York will ever forget. It was a day that changed not only the city, but the whole world. I think everybody was in a total state of shock. And I think that shock lasted for months and months and months.
American 587, Kennedy Tower. Caution, wake turbulence, runway 31 left. Taxi into position and hold.
flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please. You have the airplane.
The captain indicated the first officer would be the flying pilot on this leg. The captain designated him to fly the flight. That's routine. It's the captain's choice.
American 587, runway 31 left, cleared for takeoff.
The first officer asks about their distance behind the plane that just took off.
You happy with that distance?
We'll be all right once we get rolling. It's supposed to be 5 miles by the time we're airborne. That's the idea.
So you're happy. Lights?
Yeah, lights are on.
Takeoff checks complete. I'm on the roll. Thank you, sir.
They perform the takeoff. It's all done professionally. It's all done by standard procedures.
V1. Rotate.
Flight 587 lifts off at 9:14 a.m.
American 587, heavy, climb and maintain 13,000.
In the homes below, residents of Queens, New York hear the familiar sound of jets overhead.
Planes, take off and land. They fly right over the peninsula every 45 seconds. It was just a normal thing.
A patch of turbulence rocks the plane.
Oh boy.
Max power.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Hang on to it, hang on to it.
Let's go for power, please.
2,300 feet above the ground. Disaster strikes. The plane is losing altitude and falling out of the sky.
Holy crap!
There are 31,000 kilograms of flammable jet fuel on board.
What the hell did we get to?
And the plane is heading straight for the houses of Queens, New York.
The sound at first was just a normal airplane flying above. I was still in bed, kind of half sleeping, half awake. As it started to get louder, that's when you felt a little vibration.
We're stuck in it!
Tower, look to the south. There's an aircraft crashing.
Airplane going down.
Get out of it! Get out of it! Get out of it!
The house started vibrating very heavily. This all happened really quick.
The fuel ignites a massive fireball, engulfing several homes.
Plane crashed pretty much like in the backyard in the street, exploded. My whole window was bright orange, really loud, really bright. I just jumped up looking for my glasses and pretty much with my dad ran out to the front of the house.
Are you missing any flights? American Airlines Flight 587.
We ran out the front door. All I could see, because I didn't have my glasses, I couldn't find my glasses. The whole street was covered in flames. My whole side of my house was covered in flames, and there was just black smoke billowing up, like really high.
What the hell happened?
I remember looking back into my house, and the whole kitchen area was just black. It was all thick black smoke already.
Fire rips through the quiet neighborhood, and a city still in shock from the events of 9/11 is plunged back into fear and chaos.
Just back up. It looks like a war zone.
Jason's mother, Lois, is driving to work when she gets the most terrifying call of her life.
My husband was screaming hysterically into the phone, "The house is burning down, the house is burning down, come home." And in those moments, I went into a state of panic, thinking I didn't know where Jason was. I drove towards Rockaway, and I will never forget this. It looked just like September 11th. All I saw was the black smoke and the flames for like what looked like a mile. The whole area looked like it was on fire. And I realized that my house was like gone. And I was just in I was in total shock.
We're all
I heard Mark and Jason scream, "We're over here." And I turned around and I saw them and I ran over and I almost fainted. Then I remembered screaming to them what happened, and they're telling me a plane crashed.
The horrific scene seems to echo the events of September the 11th. All 260 people on board the plane are dead, as well as 5 people on the ground.
Everybody thought it was a terrorist attack.
Many people fear the worst.
De la bal, la bar, ești turist, ești o țintă. Connor Woodman revine sub acoperire și o să dea în fapt alte golănii care mai de care. Pungași, azi la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
Acum, berea Bucegi vine și la doză. Bucegi, inima bucegilor.
Mâncărime, roșeață. Încă de la primele semne ale eczemei, Bepanthen Sensiderm calmează și regenerează pielea. Bepanthen Sensiderm fără cortizon calmează mâncărimea și reduce roșeața.
La Hervey Sports, reducerile continuă. Până la 70% la o mulțime de produse de sezon. De exemplu, încălțăminte iarnă pentru adulți Kilimanjaro Kansas la doar 141 de lei. Doar până pe 29 ianuarie.
Hervey Sports.
Suntem fundat și curg fără oprire.
Vibrocil Duo îți sare în ajutor. Cu dublu efect, desfundă nasul rapid și reduce secrețiile nazale pentru a ajuta la eliberarea completă a nasului.
Toată lumea știe ce înseamnă să fii un om împlinit. Trebuie să-ți găsești un serviciu stabil ca să-i faci mândri pe tăi. Trebuie să ții o mașină ca să arăți că ai succes. Trebuie să-ți faci niște prieteni serioși ca să termini odată cu prostiile. Trebuie să-ți găsești jumătatea, că ai deja o vârstă. Și trebuie să te așezi la casa ta, că altfel ce o să zică lumea? Altfel de viață, altfel de bere. Ciuc Premium. Îndrăznește.
Aspirin Plus C tratează durerea și febra, iar vitamina C întărește sistemul imunitar. Dacă durerea persistă, poți lua 2 tablete de Aspirin Plus C. Aspirin Plus C se ia la primele semne ale răcelii.
Aurul ar putea să-ți întinerească tenul.
I got more balls than brain.
Băieții noștri ar putea îmbătrâni căutând filonul.
Yeah!
Aurul din Yukon. În fiecare joi la 10. Prea mic. Într-o lume mare?
My size didn't stop me. I did whatever I wanted to do.
De la mini-mi la Matador în Columbia. Viața extraordinară a oamenilor pitici.
The stage is set. It's showtime.
Ei sunt giganții lumilor. Oameni mici, planetă mare. Premiera sâmbătă la 7 pe National Geographic Channel.
After learning a plane has crashed into Queens, New York, Mayor Rudy Giuliani tries to reassure the public.
Just talked to President Bush and we talked to his chief of staff. We asked for air cover. New York City has that. The airports have been closed for a while. And I talked to the governor, and just as a precaution, we're going to close the bridges and tunnels for an hour or two.
I thought it was a terrorist attack because I couldn't imagine a plane just falling out of the sky. Why would anybody want to crash a plane into Rockaway?
For the second time in 2 months, New York airports are closed. All flights are grounded, stranding thousands of terrified passengers. Fearing the crash is another act of terrorism, the FBI immediately sends a team of agents to investigate.
Send anyone who saw what happened over to me, okay?
Barry Maughan is the assistant director of the FBI's field office in New York City. 8 weeks earlier, he was at the scene when the World Trade Center collapsed. He pulled his team out just before the Twin Towers came down.
We were still heavily involved in the investigation of 9/11. So when I heard about it, I immediately got concerned as to, was this another terrorist attack?
But the FBI isn't working alone. This is first and foremost a plane crash.
This investigation is being led by the National Transportation Safety Board to make sure that the facts are fully known to the American people.
The NTSB sends its own team of experts to Queens. They face a daunting challenge. A passenger plane and 4 houses demolished. The 2 agencies are searching for clues that are going to be very hard to find.
This was probably the most complex investigation that I had ever directed.
Robert Benson is a 17-year veteran of the NTSB. He has investigated 30 major accidents. He's in charge of a team of 21 investigators.
We like to think we enter any investigation with an open mind, but we're all human beings. And this accident occurred so close to the tragedy of 9/11 that we naturally jumped to conclusions. Then we had to force ourselves to back up and carefully study the evidence.
Make sure it's all in one place. Murphy, how are you? Inspector Murphy, Agent Maughan, FBI.
Investigator Brian Murphy is the NTSB's structures and materials expert. He's a veteran of many crashes, but this one hits close to home. He has close ties to this neighborhood.
I hadn't given it much thought until I had seen the church where we'd buried both my grandfather and my grandmother. St. Denis is right there. So, and then it came back, and when I walked over to 129th Street, I remembered, you know, being a kid, and my cousins and I were all there.
It came in fast and steep. Let's hope it's not what we think.
The NTSB and the FBI will work the crash site together until one important question is answered. Was this terrorism, or was it an accident?
Airplane parts go in the bins. Everything else stays here for now.
The crash site is a chaotic mixture of household debris and plane wreckage. Sorting one from the other is a difficult task.
Sorting between home and airplane has to be done. I don't want to take all of the 5 homes home with me to sort through. I mean, you want to try and do as best a job you can while you're on site to make sure you isolate airplane, and you also don't want to leave any airplane behind.
Definitely not from our plane. Thanks.
We've been doing this a long time, of course, and we can recognize an airplane by only looking at about 10% of it. But to a layperson, the destruction of the fuselage and the wings was so great that I would venture to say a layperson would have trouble recognizing it as an airplane crash.
Flight 587 crashed into a densely populated neighborhood. Hundreds of people saw the plane come down and are eager to tell their story.
I heard a noise. I looked up in the sky. I saw a plane. I saw fire coming out of it.
The plane blew up in half. It blew in the air.
I was half asleep. It's a sound that got me up. It was real loud.
Witness reports fuel concerns this was a terrorist attack.
Some of the witnesses were saying they saw the plane explode in the air, that they saw a huge fireball, and sounding like it had been a bomb on board.
If there was a bomb, there should be evidence of it in the debris.
Experts would be physically examining all of the parts of the plane to see if there was any indentations or outward movement of the plane indicating that the explosion was inside and pushed everything out.
Any chance this plane exploded from the inside out?
And they weren't finding any of that.
The twisted metal reveals no evidence of an explosion. But there are other signs to look for.
They would be looking for any explosive residue in any parts of the plane, which would usually tells us that this occurred because of an explosion.
Investigators take swabs from the debris and send them to be tested for explosive material.
We did a number of other things, too. We went over to the airport and we talked to the baggage handlers. We talked to the airline personnel. You know, did they note anything suspicious pertaining to the passengers on this flight?
The two agencies could soon get the answers they need. Within a day of the crash, searchers find both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder.
Hallelujah. Now let's see what secrets those boxes hold.
While investigators wait for the data to be downloaded, they continue examining the wreckage for clues. But not all of it is at the crash site in Queens.
We found the vertical stabilizer miles and miles away.
The vertical stabilizer has been found in Jamaica Bay, between the airport and the crash site. The location tells investigators it broke off while the plane was still in the air.
So that was a good first step for us.
The vertical stabilizer is part of the tail. Along with the horizontal stabilizer, it's critical for stable flight.
The horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer are almost like feathers on a dart. They keep the aircraft going in a straight direction.
You can't fly without a tail. I mean, you can't. The airplane's going to go down. There's nothing you can do about it.
Get that tail to the hangar so we can get a good close look.
To seasoned air crash investigators, the discovery hints that terrorism did not cause the crash.
The fact that we saw early on the vertical stabilizer separated from the wreckage by many miles led us to an initial hope that it wasn't a terrorist act, because it would be very difficult for a terrorist to manage to blow the vertical stabilizer off of an aircraft.
NTSB investigators are under pressure to find answers. If this wasn't an act of terrorism, there could be a flaw with the A300, one of the world's most popular planes. It's a frightening prospect.
That caused us, in our minds, to accelerate the pace of the investigation a bit, because the aircraft was not grounded. We had reason to do the investigation thoroughly but quickly.
Let me see rudder, airspeed, and yaw in real time.
Investigators pin their hopes on the flight data recorder. They immediately notice something unusual.
Look at these rudder inputs.
The rudder helps pilots turn the plane by deflecting the oncoming air. The more it pivots, the more the air is deflected and the sharper the turn.
What is going on?
From the flight data recorder, we discovered that the rudder had been moved back and forth rapidly several times. We didn't know why. Could have been caused by the pilots, one or both perhaps, reacting to something.
Investigators are intrigued. It looks like the pilots were having trouble controlling the plane during the last 30 seconds of the flight. A few seconds later, the plane pitches down suddenly and accelerates. The dramatic motion can only mean one thing. This is the moment the tail came off the plane.
Here they go with the rudder, and then 7 seconds later, the stabilizer snaps off. I don't get it.
Investigators hope the plane's cockpit voice recorder will tell them why the pilots were having so much trouble controlling their plane.
You ready to go?
And why the plane's tail came off in midair.
The CVR is an amazing device. It's a digital tape recorder that records all noises in the cockpit and noises even some outside the cockpit.
They listen to the last few moments of the flight. If a bomb brought down the plane, they should hear the sound of the explosion.
Little rate turbulence, huh?
Yeah. Investigators listen as the pilots discuss hitting the wake from another plane. It seems Molin wants more speed to help them fly through it.
250 knots, thank you.
Max power. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Hang on to it.
The investigators listen for the sound of an explosion.
We heard loud pops and snaps, and especially loud noise.
1558. That's the tail coming off.
They match the timing of that sound to the FDR data.
And we could pinpoint exactly to the second when the vertical stabilizer came off.
Holy crap! What the hell are we into? We're stuck in it! Get out of it! Get out of it! Get out of it!
Onboard explosions also have a distinct sound pulse.
I didn't hear anything that sounded like a bomb.
And we didn't hear that on the CVR.
There's nothing on the recording to indicate a bomb exploded on the plane. Not only that, but lab results confirm there's no trace of explosives on any of the debris.
No signs of an incendiary device being on board. No claims of credit. No suspicious activity either at the airport or even with the passengers themselves.
Nothing on the flight recorder? No explosion.
This was in all likelihood either a mechanical error or a pilot error.
I'm not surprised. It seems consistent with what we're finding.
Once determination is made that it's not a criminal matter,
Let's wrap it up, guys. We're done here.
then we totally go away, actually.
The FBI leaves the investigation in the hands of the NTSB.
Once we could eliminate a terrorist act, then the investigation took on a different focus. We were sure now it was an aircraft accident.
All right. Back to the wreckage. Let's figure this thing out.
Investigators are faced with a puzzling question.
How does a vertical stabilizer just fall off?
I've been investigator in charge of the NTSB for, at that time, 20 years or so, and I had never seen anything quite like this.
De la bal la bar, ești turist, ești o țintă. Connor Woodman revine sub acoperire și o să dea în fapt alte golănii care mai de care. Pungaș, azi la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
Deodorantul care salvează milioane de haine. Nivea Men Invisible for Black and White. Protecție eficientă 48 de ore cu deodorantul numărul 1 împotriva petelor galbene. Invisible for Black and White. Nivea Men. Totul începe cu tine.
Vino la McDonald's și comandă un Mcpuișor cu băutură sau cartofi prăjiți la doar 5 lei. Detalii în restaurantele participante.
Noile arome Cio fac distracția irezistibilă. Mititei de România și cheeseburger like in America.
Hello? How is it? It's awesome.
Cu ketchup le-ai încercat? Noile arome Cio fac distracția irezistibilă. Cheeseburger like in America.
Telefoanele mobile conțin aur în valoare de $1. Băieții noștri însă vor să facă milioane.
Is that a lot of gold?
Aurul e bun și la artrită.
This is the hardest part of the day.
Băieții noștri suferă cumplit.
We rolled the dice on this cut.
Goana după aur e cu risc.
Shut it off!
Let's go.
Dar băieții noștri pun totul în joc.
Leave rich or kill myself tribe.
Aurul din Yukon, în fiecare joi la 10.
Tell me about what you want.
Something custom.
I need something stormtrooper white.
I love the old school look.
Visele tale
I'm just looking to see if you could turn this into a motorized vehicle.
sunt proiectele lor.
Oh my God.
Opere de artă, piesă cu piesă.
This is not going to be easy.
O echipă cu imaginație și elan. N-ai să vezi fier mort să le stea în cale. Motociclist din naștere. În fiecare vineri la 9 pe National Geographic Channel. Servieta, transferul bancar, biroul, marfa, clienții, conducerea, resurse umane, preluare de acțiuni, directorul, droguri SRL, o afacere de miliarde. În fiecare vineri la 10 pe National Geographic Channel. Ai mintea plictisită? Dă-i atunci ceva de cheltuială. Vezi un nou sezon din Îți joacă mintea.
How would you figure out this problem?
I got it.
Avem și alte serii noi. Nu-i cum crezi.
Well, you might want to step back a little bit.
Și jocul numerelor.
Who says numbers can't be sexy?
Distrează-ți mintea. În curând, numai pe National Geographic.
Investigators study the vertical stabilizer recovered from Jamaica Bay. They look for any clues that might explain why it broke off.
Here's a case where the vertical stabilizer failed during a routine flight. And this is a very rare event, and we're trying to understand what are the factors involved in it.
As they take a closer look at the edge that broke away from the rest of the plane, they make a surprising discovery.
The fitting just ripped apart.
The vertical stabilizer is attached to the plane mainly by 3 pairs of fittings. For some reason, they all failed. It's a confounding discovery. The stabilizer is made of a modern composite material that's designed to be stronger than steel. Perhaps its strength has been overestimated.
It was actually the first accident that we had investigated where a large composite component had failed. So that became a question in our minds.
Composites are made by fusing more than 100 layers of carbon and glass fiber. Because they're both strong and lightweight, they're increasingly common in aircraft designs.
Almost all aircraft, you're going to find some type of composite material on that airplane somewhere.
Boeing plans to use carbon composite as the primary material for its new 787 Dreamliner. If composites can fail so easily, it could jeopardize the lives of thousands of people and cripple the airline industry.
If it was a structural failure, it would affect not only the accident aircraft, but the entire Airbus A300 fleet. So if there was a design flaw in the aircraft, we needed to know that very, very quickly.
Investigators comb through the manufacturing records of the downed A300. They discover some disturbing information about the stabilizer mounts.
An investigation of the early manufacturing build records from this vertical stabilizer did reveal that after it went through its inspection, it actually was noted and determined that there was a large delamination.
Delamination is the separation of the hundreds of layers which make up the composite. In other words, the material literally begins to peel apart.
You would see a reduction in the strength of the overall piece of structure, quite possibly due to that delamination.
Airbus had to repair the part before the plane was delivered to American Airlines. If the laminate failed before, perhaps it failed again.
What you're worried about in your composite structure is barely visible impact damage.
Cut it here, send it to the lab.
Damage that's not able to be seen by the naked eye.
Investigators study microscopic scans of the composite material, looking for evidence of delamination.
It looks fine to me.
They come up empty. There's no sign that the composite is peeling apart. If the material wasn't the problem, then perhaps it's the design of the mounts that's faulty. To test the design of the stabilizer mounts, investigators enlist the help of the manufacturer.
Airbus was a great party to the investigation. They were very eager to get an answer, very eager to defend their product.
All right, ready to start the test? Let's go.
Investigators want to know if the fittings really can withstand 100,000 pounds of force as they're meant to.
Stop it there. 100,000 pounds in holding. So far, so good.
The fitting has met its design requirements.
So this, in essence, confirmed the fact that the design of the vertical stabilizer attach points was good.
But the test isn't over.
Let's keep going.
Investigators apply more pressure.
That's 150,000.
They want to know exactly how much force it must have taken to snap the tail on Flight 587.
Let's keep going.
In dramatic fashion, they have their answer.
At the time the vertical stabilizer failed, the right rear lug was experiencing a load of about 200,000 pounds of force.
That's twice the force that the mounts were designed to handle.
So what would cause that kind of pressure?
Somehow, more than 200,000 pounds of pressure ripped the tail fin from the plane, a force far stronger than anything an A300 should normally encounter.
We knew, of course, from listening to the air traffic control tapes that the accident aircraft took off a minute and a half or 2 minutes after a JAL, Japanese airline, Boeing 747.
A little bit of wake turbulence, huh?
Yeah. The captain says, a little wake turbulence, huh?
Could that turbulence have been strong enough to tear the tail from the plane?
What the hell are we into?
Wake turbulence is caused by the movement of air over and under the wing. When the two streams of air meet at the wingtips, they combine to create a powerful vortex that trails behind the plane.
So you can almost imagine two tornadoes coming off the wingtips of an airplane. The effects of wake turbulence vary upon the size of the aircraft encountering the turbulence.
Small planes face the greatest risk, especially when flying behind large airliners. The powerful turbulence can be catastrophic. Pilots are trained to avoid the wakes coming off planes ahead of them by staying back a safe distance. Investigators wonder if the pilots of Flight 587 miscalculated that distance as they waited to take off behind a jumbo jet.
Japan Airlines 47 Heavy. Runway 31 left, cleared for takeoff.
The JAL flight took off at 11 minutes after 9.
American 587, Kennedy Tower. Caution wake turbulence, runway 31 left. Taxi into position and hold.
You have the airplane.
They had been cautioned about wake turbulence behind the 747 by air traffic, so they would all have been aware of it.
A minute and a half later, Flight 587 was cleared to take off in the same direction.
American 587.
Runway 31 left, cleared for takeoff.
Investigators know the first officer was concerned about their distance from the 747.
You happy with that distance?
We'll be okay once we get rolling. He's supposed to be 5 miles by the time we're airborne. That's the idea.
So you're happy. Lights?
Maybe they got too close.
If the pilots misjudged the distance to the plane ahead,
I'm on the roll.
Airport radar information should reveal their mistake. Investigators plot the paths and distance of the two planes.
Never closer than 5 miles. They should have been fine.
Their calculations show that Flight 587 was flying at a safe distance. The wake should be too weak to be dangerous.
The separation was entirely within Federal Aviation Administration regulations.
But after they hit the wake, the tail falls off. Was this some kind of super wake?
Our job then became to figure out how strong the wakes were.
Many factors can influence the intensity and direction of wake turbulence, the strongest of which is weather.
Weather and wake turbulence go hand in hand in a sense. In fact, wake turbulence is almost a weather phenomenon. I mean, it's air movement. In a perfectly calm wind condition, for instance, the wake turbulence off of an aircraft goes straight back and affects anything straight behind it. If you have a crosswind, the wakes off the tips of the wings actually blow with the wind. They remain rotating, but they move.
Winds were just 11 knots.
Investigators discover that there was very little wind as Flight 587 took off. That may have made things worse. There was no wind to help dissipate the vortex. NASA scientists conduct a study to determine exactly how strong the wake would have been.
They said at the time of the encounter by the accident aircraft, the wake from the 747 had dissipated 20 to 40% or so.
The vertical stabilizer can withstand almost 200,000 pounds of bending force. Even at full strength, the wake from a 747 should not be strong enough to snap the tail off an A300. At 80% of its strength, it could not have done any damage at all.
Not even close to what it would take to rip the tail off an Airbus.
Investigators return to the best clue they have, the unusual rudder movements.
11 degrees left. 11 degrees right.
We saw the rudder go back and forth to its maximum deflection several times very, very rapidly. As of this point, we still didn't know why, but that was something that raised our eyebrows.
11 degrees left. 11 degrees right. Could he have ripped the tail off his own plane?
We need to determine whether that particular motion would be violent enough to snap the vertical stabilizer off.
Normally, pilots only move the rudder a couple of degrees in either direction to steer the plane. Investigators wonder if the extreme rudder movements on Flight 587 created the aerodynamic force needed to tear the stabilizer off.
You ready?
To find out, they create a computer simulation of an A300 and fly it the same way as First Officer Mullin, moving the rudder 11 degrees back and forth 3 times.
With each rudder deflection, the aerodynamic loads on the tail increase.
There. That would have done it.
And it was those increasing loads that caused this.
They concluded that it was the inputs that were being made on the controls that led to the structural failure and then no other factor.
Well, he's doing it to himself.
And by way of analogy, you stick your hand out a car window going 60 miles an hour, and you can feel it being pushed backwards. Well, try sticking your hand out the window when you're going 250 miles an hour. Well, you probably lose your hand.
What was he thinking?
The discovery finally explains what happened to American Airlines Flight 587. But it doesn't explain why.
So now we've eliminated several items, and we're starting to look at the actions of the flight crew very carefully.
It's clear the pilots should have had no trouble handling the amount of wake turbulence they experienced on takeoff.
Our studies through NASA indicated that the strength of the wakes were not that severe. They were easily manageable.
Normally in wake turbulence, an airplane, especially as large as an A300, can respond itself to the wake turbulence. There's a momentary discomfort.
Oh boy.
And then the airplane resumes normal flight.
But that's not what happened on Flight 587.
Little wake turbulence, huh?
The captain commented a little wake turbulence.
Yeah.
He may have been questioning the first officer's response. And he was just saying, you know, it was not that big a thing, was it?
You all right?
Yeah, fine.
What's surprising was the first officer's response. There really should not be a call to have that kind of aggressive actions to it.
They don't understand why an experienced pilot would move his rudder so violently to fly out of the wake. Investigators talk to pilots who flew with Molin.
You take a seat.
They make a surprising discovery.
We began to suspect that the first officer overreacted.
Tell me what happened.
There was one unusual aspect that was disturbing, that he had a history of responding very aggressively to wake turbulence.
He did the same thing 7 years ago.
He moved the rudder pedal quickly back and forth. The captain said that he was shocked by this.
He was overworking the rudders.
He said, "Why did you do that? Why did you respond like that?" And according to the statement, the first officer said they taught us to respond like that in the training.
Is it possible that the airline is teaching their pilots such a dangerous maneuver? Investigators have to find out before another pilot makes the same mistake.
Servieta, transferul bancar, biroul, marfa, clienții, conducerea, resurse umane, preluare de acțiuni, directorul, droguri SRL, o afacere de miliarde. În fiecare vineri la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
Nasule, nu mai putem continua în felul ăsta. Trebuie să respir din nou.
Sunt înfundat și curg fără oprire. Mă predau.
Când nasul este înfundat și curge, te simți ca într-o bătălie continuă. Atunci ai nevoie de Vibrocil Duo și dubla sa acțiune. Este o combinație unică de substanțe cu dublu efect. Desfundă nasul rapid și reduce secrețiile nazale pentru a ajuta la eliberarea completă a nasului.
Vibrocil Duo. Lasă nasul să respire. Acesta este un medicament. Citiți cu atenție prospectul.
Telefoanele mobile conțin aur în valoare de $1. Băieții noștri însă vor să facă milioane.
Is that a lot of gold?
Aurul e bun și la artrită.
This is the hardest part of the day.
Băieții noștri suferă cumplit.
We rolled the dice on this cut.
Goana după aur e cu risc.
Shut it off!
What's up?
Dar băieții noștri pun totul în joc.
Leave rich or kill myself tried.
Aurul din Yukon, în fiecare joi la 10.
Tell me about what you want.
Something custom.
I need something stormtrooper white.
I love the old school look.
Visele tale
I'm just looking to see if you could turn this into a motorized vehicle.
sunt proiectele lor. Opere de artă, piesă cu piesă.
This is not going to be easy.
O echipă cu imaginație și elan. N-ai să vezi fier mort să le stea în cale. Motociclist din naștere. În fiecare vineri la 9 pe National Geographic Channel. Ai mintea plictisită? Dă-i atunci ceva de cheltuială. Vezi un nou sezon din Îți joacă mintea.
How would you figure out this problem?
I got it.
Avem și alte serii noi. Nu-i cum crezi.
Well, you might want to stop up a little bit.
Și jocul numerelor.
Who says numbers can't be sexy?
Distrează-ți mintea. În curând, numai pe National Geographic.
Aceasta e scena unor crime. Numărul suspecților, indefinit. Unde se pot ascunde? Oriunde. Ancheta e o întrecere cu timpul, pentru că descoperirea vinovatului înseamnă salvarea altor vieți omenești. Misiunea continuă. Experții ne asigură că zborul devine tot mai sigur. Dezastre în aer. Serie nouă. În fiecare joi la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
Get out of it! Get out of it! Holy crap!
Investigators believe the first officer was following his training when he overreacted to wake turbulence. They discover that one of the situations Molin trained for likely taught him a dangerous lesson. American Airlines pilots are trained to recover from steep rolls, up to 90 degrees wing down, an almost unheard of occurrence.
This isn't what happens in flight. You recover much quicker. You roll the airplane 5 degrees and then you put it back. You never let it get to 90 degrees. There's no history of this.
Wait for 90 degrees.
To make the exercise more effective, unfortunately, the simulator was programmed not to respond to any pilot inputs within the first few moments.
Recover now. Recover now. The only way to recover is with sustained rudder inputs.
That's the situation I never want to be in.
Investigators wonder what trainees were told about the cause of the sudden upset.
And what did they say would cause such a situation? Well, that explains everything.
It was an example of training that did not equate to reality.
They learned that some trainees were presented with an impossible scenario.
For this drill, there's a Boeing 747 just ahead of you. When you encounter his wake, the upset will begin.
They were told that wake turbulence would induce the sudden roll.
The wake turbulence rarely tilts you more than 10 degrees in any direction, and it's easily recoverable.
Unfortunately, the exercise was exaggerated. The airplane banked one direction a little bit and then went very strongly to 90 degrees, which is a tremendous bank in the opposite direction.
We determined that they were actually providing, inadvertently, providing some negative training to their pilots. That led us to the conclusion that he overreacted, and we had the reasons why.
Little wake turbulence, huh?
Yeah. First Officer Molin was trained to believe that severe wake turbulence could cause a catastrophic upset.
Max power. You all right?
The captain asks him, "Are you all right?" And it's noteworthy that the captain does not add max power. In the captain's opinion, max power is not appropriate in this situation. The first officer began responding with wheel back and forth and accompanied by rudder, back and forth rudder.
Hang on to it. Hang on to it.
He thought it was some outside turbulence or something else that was happening, and he was making opposite controls and was fighting himself and didn't know that it was actually his inputs that were causing the problem.
First officer overreacted on the rudders. He didn't let the aircraft stabilize in one position or the other, so it hits a stop and then whips itself back and forth, and this creates huge loads on the vertical part of the fin.
The first officer's actions stress the vertical stabilizer until it breaks under the strain.
What the hell are we into?
Get out of it! Get out of it! Get out of it!
After the accident, American Airlines changes its training procedures dealing with wake turbulence.
Once it became clear that some negative training was going on, American Airlines, to their credit, revamped the program to prevent this type of activity.
The training simulator has been modified to be more realistic. Inputs have an immediate effect. Pilots are now taught not to use the rudder at high speed. A new warning light is also installed in the cockpit to help prevent pilots from deflecting the rudder too far during flight.
Well, when people ask me about the effects of 587, I hark back on the incredible loss of life. It's the second worst accident in U.S. history.
I lost everything, but other people, look at all these people who are dead. So it puts it in perspective for you.
Since this accident, the industry made major changes in terms of pilot training and made a big effort to help pilots understand this situation so that they will not be caught by surprise, so this will never happen again.
Aceasta e scena unor crime. Numărul suspecților indefinit. Unde se pot ascunde? Oriunde. Ancheta e o întrecere cu timpul, pentru că descoperirea vinovatului înseamnă salvarea altor vieți omenești. Misiunea continuă. Experții ne asigură că zborul devine tot mai sigur. Dezastre în aer. Serie nouă. În fiecare joi la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
Haide, Azorică, hai odată! Haide, du-te acolo! Da, hai! Hai odată! Du-te acolo! Cățel prost!
Red Bull îți dă aripi! Deodorantul care salvează milioane de haine. Nivea Men Invisible for Black and White. Protecție eficientă 48 de ore cu deodorantul numărul 1 împotriva petelor galbene. Invisible for Black and White. Nivea Men. Totul începe cu tine.
Acum, berea Bucegi vine și la doză. Bucegi, inima bucegilor.
Încearcă acum noul Besel Gold, care are gust fin de unt și păstrează toată bunătatea lui Besel. Noul Besel Gold, pe gustul inimii.
Telefoanele mobile conțin aur în valoare de $1. Băieții noștri însă vor să facă milioane. Aurul e bun și la artrită.